here I am, totally not even done, not even halfway done with that Pokemon video yet, mostly because I have a real life, and these take a long time to make. So, as a little treat for you, to get a video before the next big one is ready, and as a treat for me to show some fruits of research of stuff that's happening in the background, but I also want to do something with that big brain Shonen Jump information I've gathered in the meanwhile, we're going to look at some of the representations of black people in Shonen Jump, and given the socio-political climate right now, I figure no better time than right now, where it's becoming very apparent that there are very few black people in the larger anime and manga community that are making this kind of analytical content. So, here we go. This isn't going to be super structured or scripted because I'm just kind of doing this as a little side situation, and it's also not going to be all-encompassing because we're kind of limiting these to series I've reread or think about fairly frequently, so some big fan favorites that would have definitely gotten the A+ 10 out of 10 rating like Bleach, I've literally never read, so maybe I'll come back to it if you guys like this video and I ever read Bleach. But meanwhile, let's hop on in with some Dragon Ball. So a lot of my black peers find some amount of representation in Dragon Ball, and I sort of understand why. Goku is a character who has largely been cut off from his very interesting lineage, and once he is then confronted with his own lineage, as turns out, his people were enslaved by a literal white monster that, owns pretty much the entire world, or the entire, galaxy, or most of the Dragon Ball universe, and constantly is just this elitist big piece of shit that views Goku and the boys as like these dumb subhuman apes. He literally calls them monkey. And Goku, among his peers, for at least most of the series thus far, he's an ethnic minority. Everyone else are various types of humans, they're all earthlings, but it's just Goku who has this very different relationship with his own past and history. And I definitely do see the parallels between the African American experience and that of Goku, but, I'm gonna have to give this one an F for bad representation, because one of the big important things about, black representation is that you have to be black, and Goku's like an Asian guy. So I'll give you a half point for some death of the author stuff, but you only get half because a big part of being black is being black. Alright, then there's Mr. Popo. No F, that's an F-. Sorry, Dragon Ball, you've really goofed up on that one. To my understanding, in the Funimation dub of Dragon Ball, instead of having the money to, make Mr. Popo's lips smaller because he looks like a horrifying Sambo figure, they decided to make his speech more refined and intellectual, and honestly, I do think that's pretty cool. I like Popo's character better that way. To my understanding, normally Popo's speech pattern is this sort of, rough, unga bunga, very primalistic speak, which is, as you can probably tell, that's bad. That's bad representation. You don't want to imply your black people are just these dumb animals. Okay, so next up is Staff Commander Black, or something like that. Sometimes he's called General Black, sometimes he's just Commander Black. So, to my understanding, in the anime version, they changed his title somewhat from the semi-generic general to something else that's different, because in Japanese it just happens to be Sambo, which, that's a racist thing. Bad F. Shame on you, Toriyama. Come on, dude. Step it up. I know you can do better. You did surprisingly good stuff with, other types of minorities, I guess. Sorry, mate, but we're giving you an F so far, but let's see if we can turn this around at Piccolo. Alright, so Piccolo's another one that people see a lot of commonality with. And this one is a little better, because Piccolo at least is, very immediately different from the rest of his peers. He is buff and bald, like most other Dragon Ball guys, but he is clearly an ethnic minority. He's a big green man. I do take some umbrage with saying that Piccolo's black, mostly because he's a green man. If you want to make a black person black, just make him black. You don't have to, say they're a different race, right? But I'm in the camp of I don't think Piccolo necessarily was meant to represent a black person. I just think it's the culmination of a whole bunch of other existing anime stereotypes that kind of come together in a way that happens to hit the black community in a very unique way. However, and this may or may not be beyond the scope of this video, the way in which Piccolo's unique masculinity and relationship to his history is manifested may have some overlap with black men, but I see that falling apart when you try to apply that to black women, because that largely doesn't really match the story of women, like having this very particular role of masculinity placed on you and then having to unlearn a lot of that same masculinity, which seems to be more or less at the core of Piccolo's character, of learning to be still this very gruff, macho, machismo, like never cry kind of fella, which is a very not great conversation that the black community does need to continue having, but that kind of thing is kind of exclusive of black women and doesn't really reflect their story very well. So Piccolo, I'm giving you a D. Sorry. Women's rights, everybody. Okay, next up is Eyeshield 21. Very notoriously, written by the man who redraws one's One Punch Man and puts it in Shonen Jump, also breaking a pre-existing contract he had because he just thought One Punch Man was so good. So there's a lot of good representation in Eyeshield 21 of just having like normal black people, because it's about football and a lot of black people, you know, do football in the real life. Or at least I think so. I'm a big nerd that doesn't know anything about sports. And normally that would line it up to like an A rating, right? You would think that just some normal black people that don't look like super racist or anything, that are generally pretty likable, A rating, right? Well, you're fucking wrong. They're getting an F, and here's why. It becomes a plot point that black people are just magically, genetically stronger than Japanese people. And our boys on the bats, the Hellbats, I think they're called, just have no hope of matching a black person in terms of, fucking strength and speed. And I understand that there are some dietary reasons for why Americans on average are just big as fuck and black people just kind of tend to be a little bit taller than our peers. But also, I don't really care much for basing your whole argument on they're just genetically better or worse, because that's bad. Like, a lot of shithead white supremacists will base their whole argument about saying, well, no, I just think it's, just some racial differences. I think some races are good at stuff and others aren't. So the sin for the sin of enabling folks that ask things like the old JQ, F. Sorry, I know it's not your fault. I can understand how you reached that conclusion, but sorry, Eyeshield Man, you get an F. Better luck in One Punch Man. Okay, next up is my precious, and likely the subject of a future, extremely long video, Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, all of the black people in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are for the most part confined to the very ending, like the final Millennium World story arc section of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? But wait, that's not all. The Spirit of the Pharaoh? He's a black dude. He's like totally from Egypt. Whenever they flash back to him in his original body, he has dark skin. And until another entry that we will go to later in this list, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has the highest number of friendly black faces in a anime period I can really think of, or manga for that matter. And because they took the liberty of making all these characters, even though, they don't have any immediately black features, they did make sure to always have these characters with dark skin. So that is definitely something relevant. And when I used to work in a movie theater, there used to be a lot of Egypt-based movies featuring white guys that came out at the exact same time. So it allowed me to say one of my favorite things, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has more accurate representation of Egyptian people than actual Hollywood movies. So that alone is getting it a B. But there are a lot of friendly black faces, even if they don't have immediately distinctively black features. Now, I guess there is a discussion to be had here about what constitutes black, because a lot of people that are north of the Sahara don't necessarily classify themselves as black, but relative to the time period we're talking about, where it is literally ancient Egypt, I feel more or less comfortable just claiming that whole continent area as black folks. So Yu-Gi-Oh, you're getting a solid B. The reason it's not an A is because this horrifying dude, that is basically just Mr. Popo again, who mysteriously vanishes halfway through the arc, probably because they realized it was horrifying. Side note, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, as much as I also love it dearly, even though it's, just horrible and bad, there's Axel Rode, who's just a regular duelist man. He's just a normal dude. He's just a regular character in the big cavalcade of dual guys with unique powers, and that would have gotten him an A. But he has a fucking dual disc that's a fucking gun, so that's dropping you down. It's just stopping Yu-Gi-Oh! From, getting an A. That fat guy that's like Mr. Popo, and Axel having a fucking gun. Sorry. Now, I'm aware there is a Australian guy who carries around a big alligator and has a big hunting hat on, as you would expect from someone who is, I guess, maybe Steve Irwin or something. But we're not talking about the Australian representation list. I'll let someone who's Australian handle that. And if you do that, please link me. Please let me know you made it, because I kind of want to see it. But we're talking about black folks today, and as far as black folks, oof, you almost had it. Alright, next up, Shaman King. Oh god. So with Dragon Ball Z, I never quite want to pin it quite as hard as I could, possibly because of nostalgia, possibly because Popo just looks so fucking alien and horrifying that he doesn't really register as a black person. And partially because the Sambo Man doesn't really do anything particularly racist, and it's just another bad guy for Goku to fight, and may even be more interesting because he doesn't really have any fighting ability. He just has a gun, which, may be bad, but, he's in a suit, so it's fine. But then there's Chocolove. As a character, I generally like Chocolove. He's just a regular old funny dude. But, I mean, look at this man. I gotta ding you for having big cartoon mammy lips. Sorry, that's a no. You got the big cartoon afro. Again, that's a no. You've got the little pot belly situation going on with the little tummy. Come on, Shaman King. His guardian ghost is literally a fucking jaguar. Are you fucking with me? No, It's a shame, because I like Chocolove's character, and there are other black characters in Shaman King that seem a little less racist, or, you can even reverse the card a little bit and just say Shaman King is equally racist to everyone. Like, there's a Chinese character who's wearing the Dragon Lady dress with a panda on the front of it, and her guardian ghost is a Zhengxi, a traditional Chinese vampire, that effectively has the ghost of Bruce Lee in it. Which isn't, that's not great, but again, I'm kind of judging this not based on its own internal logic, but how it fits into a larger global picture, as most things should do, because art doesn't really exist on its own. It exists in a context, and the context indicates that's bad. Shaman King, that's bad. It is cool that Chocolove is a main character. He is one of the most powerful characters in the show. He does fight real good. There's no shame if, you think he's an awesome dude. I love his adult design. His adult design is awesome. That kind of captures that middle ground of saying, yes, there are some, facial features and stuff that are way more common for black people, but aren't necessarily like unga bunga, this man bad, because his adult design looks like a guy that I know. If I was a little kid, I wouldn't be surprised if I grew up into that and became a respectable, non-racist, non-gun man adult with a jaguar ghost, or my special move is shooting you because black people. So Shaman King, you're getting an F, but because of Chocolove's adult design, I'm going to give you an F with an honorable mention. So think of that as the difference between failing a class with 13%, where it seems like you just didn't even show up, versus failing a class with 49%, where you could have got a D if you tried a little harder. You seem to have mastered some concept along the way, but you're definitely really far from where you should be right now. Okay, next up is Bleach. I didn't watch Bleach, but seems alright to me. I'm going to tentatively give you a solid B, because whenever a black woman says, I want to cosplay, someone gets up in her ear and says, you should cosplay this character. And usually when people say that in good faith and not like a Mr. Popo, that usually means whatever series we're talking about or whatever character we're talking about is an honest to God good representation. So we'll put that at a B, but if any black women out there think I'm fucking wrong on this, please comment because I want to hear your opinions on that one. Because I can also sympathize with if one more motherfucker tells me that I should cosplay Yoruichi, I will literally snap their neck in half. F minus. Get out of here. Stop it. It's making me fucking sick of this shit. An opinion that I don't necessarily hold, but I can certainly see people having. That grade could literally change at any time because I've literally never seen Bleach before. Okay, so now we're on to the good one. Naruto. A+, surprisingly. A very common response to asking for more black people in Japanese media is the, relatively understandable response of, but it's Japan. Like, they don't really have that many black people in Japan. Well, see, here's the cool thing about it, though, is that, it's your fiction. You can write whatever you want to. Like, if you want to just have a country of black people, you can just have a country of black people. And Naruto just went ahead and did that. Like, there's magic, so it's not really a huge stretch of the imagination that there are countries out there that are just primarily made of people in different ethnic groups that still fundamentally work on the same basic logic and basic Japanese structure, but just happen to be not Japanese. Admittedly, the Kumagai characters do show up pretty late in the series, so except for Killer Bee and the Raikage, who's the leader of that particular country, there's not a whole lot of fleshed out characterization for these guys, but that's mostly because they show up right before the final act, so I can't really get too mad. And when I say the final act, I don't mean like they showed up 2 seconds before the ending, but Naruto just had a huge ending. It's a big 15-year spanning epic, so I can understand if, even if it had 5 years to flesh out these characters, most of that 5-year time was mostly relegated to a relatively small handful of characters. Specifically Killer Bee. I'm going to give Killer Bee the GOAT award, the GOAT, A+, because even though, yeah, he does sing and dance and rap, and it's all very silly and a little bit stereotypical, overall, B is a very likable character, but more importantly, one that's actually super important for the rest of the cast. Now, I understand that there is a certain element of the magical Negro who shows up and solves everyone's problems, right? But I really don't know if I would apply those same flavor of tropes to Japanese media, mostly because, as far as I can tell, that trope in Western media, or at the very least in Western pop culture media that Shonen normally draws from, that trope doesn't really exist quite as much anymore. So maybe that's just an unfortunate coincidence. So I'll let that slide, that B primarily serves as a character to aid Naruto along his journey. And I'll definitely give it even more benefit of the doubt there, because most characters in Naruto primarily are tools for Naruto's journey, not just the black ones. And it's so interesting that among all of these characters that are mostly here to help Naruto on his journey, and all these characters that we have been told were like Naruto in his youth, and seem to aspire to be someone like Naruto is, because in the narrative of Naruto, Naruto is the pinnacle of what a human being should be. Killer Bee is the only character among these countless characters that are like Naruto that seem to have not only have been like Naruto at some point or another, but took that formula of the quote-unquote ideal human, which is canon. Sorry if I spoiled that a little bit. And went beyond that. Like, he's looking at Naruto, he knows what Naruto's thinking because he's been there, and he has aged significantly well past that point. He's a fun guy. It's very fun that when the situation is looking at its worst with that whole Akatsuki invasion situation, there's finally a character who can put these dudes in their place, and with Sasuke making as many bad decisions as he does in Shippuden, finally a character that fucking wrecks him, putting him in his place very specifically because of the bad choices that he made. So, Naruto, pretty good. You're surprisingly getting an A. I feel like there are places you can improve that, like putting more darker skinned characters in the narrative earlier. Maybe that would be reserved for like an S rating. But B, as a character, definitely gave us some much needed levity and gave us sort of an idea of where Naruto was going with this whole tailed beast situation and how that kind of thing could end up resolving in a way that is narratively consistent with what the rest of Naruto seems to be going for. There are definitely tons of other black characters from Kumagai in Naruto, but again, they just show up a little bit too late for me to be that invested in them before that whole ninja war thing goes down. So, there are some flaws there, but I'm giving Naruto an A. Believe it. Okay, so Death Note is also here as a dishonorable mention. This one's just a little treat for me because this is a hill I could die on, but I don't know if I have enough words to make a whole video on it. So there are no black people in Death Note, that's fine, it's a narrative that takes place entirely in Japan, no problem, it's all fine. The Death Note movie cast L as a black dude, and that seems all well and good. And it casts Light as a white dude. Let's put whitewashing aside for just 1 second, right? Which is the opposite of what I'd normally say. What if Death Note was the narrative of a white dude that is taking advantage of his own privilege, the fact that the police won't immediately be suspicious of him because he's a white dude, and he's going around killing American prisoners that are by and large just victims of the very racist and very classist American criminal justice system, where a dude could be totally innocent but just can't afford a lawyer and can't afford bail, so he just goes to jail. And this primarily happens to poor people, and poor people just mostly are black. So we have the opportunity to make that kind of very interesting social commentary. And in an old video on another channel I once made, I famously, except for not really because like people watch it, I famously said, if that is what Death Note the movie is going to be about, the live-action Netflix Death Note movie, I will eat my hat. And that's unfortunate because that hat has acrylic letterings on it. And unfortunately, I hate saying it, but that very easy slam dunk for a film premise that very easily could have been a greatest of all time didn't happen, and I remained hungry. So, Death Note, F-. You literally had every chance to make it cool. You had every chance to make a great big statement on that kind of situation, and just fucking didn't. It's cool that you cast L's a black dude. I guess that's fine. A really dumb maneuver if you tried to do that to just clean over the fact that Light is a white guy. But you know, you could have made something truly special, and you didn't, and you just made a worse Final Destination movie. So F. Alright, next up is Promised Neverland, one of my favorite Jump series that shit the bed during its ending so hard, I just got fed up and it retroactively unfavorited itself. Oops. So the obvious one in the room is Sister Crone. When I did another channel, I made a nice, interesting video about Sister Crone that to this day, people somewhat regularly comment on saying, no, it's not racist to have a big unga bunga spooky black lady. How's that racist? Sometimes people just have big lips and big noses and look scary. Listen, if your character can just be like spooky Aunt Jemima is coming to get you, F. No. Now, I will concede, I like Sister Crone as a character. If I had known her narrative without looking at her as a character, it would have been pretty good. Some real all-star representation. It's pretty common for extremely intelligent black women that might be sometimes a little bit heavy-set to be stuck with jobs that otherwise suck. They just suck and they're awful. And someone of this mental caliber really shouldn't be doing this type of menial dog shit, I hate this and want to go home labor. And you know, that could be a very interesting narrative to squeeze into your totally fictional thing. Get some real life in there, just toss it in, and just say, ha, see, I just made a statement on job availability and how that relates to sexism and racism. You could have had that. And that is there a little bit, but also the person that is the subject of this is a big, scary Aunt Jemima. So Sorry, that's getting a solid D for being a likable character with a good backstory, and it's fun to see the rival character of a series, or at least for a section of it, be a black woman, which I don't think I've ever seen, period, but also she looks like a big scary Aunt Jemima. The rest of Neverland's black cast, which there are quite a few black people, are all just fine. Definitely another Yu-Gi-Oh! A situation, but, sorry, I'll give you full credit for trying. I don't necessarily think a homeboy that did Promise Neverland is an especially hateful person. When adapting the anime, they did change Sister Crone's face in a way that I think basically looks fine, and I have no real issue with that or her character when it comes to the anime. But when it comes to the source material, which is what I almost always base this type of discussion off of, it's a little unfortunate. So I'm gonna have to, if Sister Crone is getting a D, and the rest of these characters are getting like a B to like a low A, then I kind of gotta give it a C for putting in good effort, some stuff that I like, but some real serious deep running flaws. Okay, so the last one for today is gonna be One Piece, where I'm actually going to be a little bit more favorable than you would expect. So you may be thinking that I'm going to say the Fishman Island segment. The whole Fishman and merfolk ethnic groups as a whole have parallels with black people. And unlike Dragon Ball with the Saiyans and the Namekians, this one is much more intentional, with a very clearly intended MLK analog and a very clear Malcolm X analog. I'm not gonna lie, that's a talk for another day. There's a lot going on there, and this video is just one where I'm kind of spouting out words here with very few notes. Let that one be your sequel bait. What we're really going to talk about today are two of the most important characters in One Piece who happen to be black. Usopp. He's doing that marksman thing. He's helping Luffy be Pirate King. It's like the song said, I think. Okay, it's gonna be really weird one day when we circle back around and we one day talk about One Piece's issue with transphobia. And I'm going to do the exact opposite argument when I do that. But the way all of One Piece's characters kind of look on their own, especially for the boys and the men, Usopp's kind of racist features feel like they were a little bit incidental. He has the big nose, he has the big lips, but a lot of characters in One Piece just kind of look silly and wacky, and I'm not entirely convinced if it was intentional to have Usopp be the black dude and give him big lips because he is the black dude. Because in many ways, Usopp does not look like a generic black man. If you didn't know, Usopp is a black dude. Oda has confirmed if Usopp was a real man from real life, it would be from Africa. His father, Yasopp, is a pretty light-skinned guy, but is very black. Now, his mother is not black, but also that only improves the situation because we really don't see that many mixed race black characters. I mean, maybe we might see the occasional one to justify why this character speaks Japanese. That does occasionally happen, but in Usopp's situation, we just really don't see that much representation from my light-skinned friends who are definitely black. He's a very big, important character. He's in all the openings and all the endings, if One Piece had endings anymore. One of the primary crew members. He doesn't really do as much anymore, but that's because all the Straw Hats that aren't, like, big fight boys just don't really have shit to do anymore, and that's unfortunate. But, Usopp, you're getting an A in my book, and I'm a biased party because Usopp is probably my favorite Straw Hat outside of my beloved Nico Robin. Speaking of Nico Robin, didn't plan on talking about her, but okay. So, in the manga, she's the same skin color as everyone else, pretty light skin character. Until the time skip, the anime actually made her skin quite a little bit darker. She's a good character. I don't know if she would be black. I don't think so. I don't necessarily think that every darker skin character is immediately black. There are other ethnic groups out there that do exist that are not necessarily black. And, we gotta give some of our other, folks of color some representation of their own, you know what I mean? That's why I have nothing to say about Uhhh, because I don't think he's a black dude. He kind of reads more Middle Eastern, or perhaps Indian, but that's just me. The real next character we're going to talk about is the big bad man himself, Blackbeard. Much like Nico Robin. In the anime, he is generally depicted as a little bit darker, but Oda has once again said himself, if Blackbeard was a character, he would be from Somalia. He would be a Somalian pirate. And I'm not gonna lie, normally, maybe that would get you a little bit of a dink, but modern shonen is very big on genre fiction, and I feel like Somalian pirates is fine and not like horribly awful or anything of that nature. No problem here. Blackbeard is super evil, but we don't quite know exactly how evil he is. He seems like an overall good villain. I like him. It's always a joy when he shows up. It's too bad he's such a big, powerful, evil man that he doesn't really have all that much screen time, because he's really a joy to have on screen. I love the fact that the definitive evil Luffy, who's always one step ahead of him and has so much in common, yet so much the exact opposite when it comes to kindness and friendship, but the same type of beliefs about like freedom and stuff. Blackbeard, you're getting an A, because you can totally have bad guys that are good representation. If you want to be like Luffy and stretch, I guess Blackbeard does have a bunch of fucking guns on him, but I mean, come on guys, let's be real, that's just what pirates do. You know, pirates sometimes just kind of looked a little bit disheveled, you know what I mean? So, Blackbeard, A+. One Piece, the number of characters is a little bit low, but I'm gonna have to overall give One Piece a solid C+, mostly because of how long it is versus the relative low number of characters that are black. The more I think about Fishman Island, the more I want to knock it down like 3 pegs, but I don't know if that's entirely fair. Fishman Island seems to be its own thing that, once again, we will discuss some other day, possibly. Speaking of some other day, I also forgot about the treasure pirates from One Piece Heart of Gold. You know, we'll get to that some other time if you guys are into it. So, now that we've done all this, and I probably made everyone who has ever not been black angry in the comments, why don't you just go ahead and like the video out of spite to show me, to let me boast my buffoonish opinion, so more people will see it, and then more of them will be able to laugh at me for my obviously bad opinions. And if you're not racist, just like it anyway, because you're a chill dude. And hopefully this has been a fun diversion. Well, for me, probably not for you if you're not black, but this has been a fun diversion. And now back to your regularly scheduled not content until I'm ready to make it. That will be much longer than I originally intended it to be. Well, I guess that part is still accurate, but you know what I mean. Please subscribe if this got your jimmies all hot and bothered, or whatever the kids say, and maybe follow me on social media if you too feel like being radicalized by the left and by anime and manga, but mostly manga.